Welcome back, everyone. Ready for another deep dive.
Always ready to explore something new.
Well, this time we're heading into the world of Karin Slaughter's thriller, The Good Daughter.
Oh, I've heard good things about that one.
It's a real page-turner, and today we'll be looking at excerpts from the novel. We're going to see how Slaughter uses real-world details like forensic science and psychology to make this fictional world feel super real and believable.
That's one of the things I love about thrillers when they blend those real-world elements with the fictional narrative. Makes it that much more gripping.
Exactly. And we'll be talking about some pretty interesting stuff. For example, did you know there's actual science behind why some people are just naturally likable?
Really? I'd love to hear more about that.
Well, one of the first things that grabbed me in the book was the character of Gamma, this brilliant scientist. She struggles with being liked, even though she's accomplished so much. And the book actually explains this, linking likability to genetics and melanin production.
That's fascinating. I know melanin affects things like hair and skin color, but how does that tie into likability?
That's where it gets interesting. There's research suggesting that certain genetic traits, like those influencing melanin production, can play a role in how people perceive us.
So it's not just about how we present ourselves, but also about these underlying biological factors that we might not even be aware of.
Exactly. It makes you wonder how much of our social success is influenced by things we can't control. Those first impressions, those gut feelings about could genetics be playing a part?
It's a question worth pondering. It definitely adds a whole new layer to understanding social dynamics. But The Good Daughter doesn't stop there. It also delves into the lasting impact of trauma, especially on memory. The story revolves around this childhood trauma that continues to haunt the main characters, Charlie and Samantha, even years later.
Yeah, the book really gets into how trauma can mess with your memory. Charlie and Samantha had these fragmented memories, these flashes of the past that intrude on their present lives.
You know, that's something I've seen in my own work, too. Under extreme stress or violence, the brain can actually form fragmented or incomplete memories.
So it's not just a plot device, it's a real psychological phenomenon. That's incredible.
Absolutely. It's a common response to trauma, and it can have a huge impact on how we process and cope with those experiences, sometimes for decades.
Wow. It can affect our emotions, our decisions, even our relationships.
Exactly. And the novel explores all of that in a really nuanced way.
And it's not just the emotional fallout either. Charlie, who's a lawyer, faces some serious ethical dilemmas as she defends a murder suspect. Makes you think about that classic lawyer's dilemma. Duty to your client versus personal conscience.
It's a tough one. Where do you draw the line when you believe your client might be capable of terrible things?
Right. The novel really digs into the complexities of legal ethics. There are scenes involving witness tampering, suppression of evidence, and the whole idea of a fair trial, even for someone who seems undeniably guilty.
It forces us to ask these uncomfortable questions about the justice system. Does it always serve its intended purpose? Is it truly about seeking the truth?
Big questions, for sure. And it's not just theoretical. The novel is packed with these incredibly detailed forensic scenes. You're practically right there with the investigators, analyzing blood spatter, ballistic evidence.
Oh, and piecing together psychological profiles. That's a technique used to try to understand the motivations and behavior patterns, especially in criminal cases. They analyze personality traits, past behavior, social connections, all kinds of things.
Trying to create a profile that helps predict future actions.
Or even shed light on past events. It's really fascinating, although it can be controversial. And the novel does a great job of weaving it into the story.
It's amazing how even the smallest details, like a misplaced object, can be crucial pieces of evidence. It reminds me of those true crime documentaries where they zoom in on a tiny fiber or a footprint, and
It reveals a whole new piece of the puzzle.
it's incredible what those details can reveal. But beyond the forensic science, The Good Daughter also gets into the power of silence and secrets.
Oh, absolutely. The characters are burdened by these unspoken truths, and it shapes their present in so many ways.
It's like those secrets become this invisible weight that they're carrying.
Right, and the setting, a small southern town where everyone knows everyone else's business, that just intensifies everything.
For sure. The novel really captures how social dynamics, community norms, that whole small town atmosphere can have this huge influence, not just on individual behavior, but on the whole pursuit of justice.
Absolutely. Gossip and reputation are everything in a place like that. Speaking out can have serious consequences.
It creates this pressure cooker environment where secrets can fester, and the truth can be so hard to uncover. And speaking of truth, remember all those forensic details and hidden confessions we were talking about? Well, let me tell you, They play a major role in this shocking plot twist that completely changes the course of the investigation.
Oh, I love a good plot twist. You think you have it all figured out, and then...
And everything gets flipped on its head.
All right.
It's a classic case of appearances being deceiving, and it makes you question everything you thought you knew about the characters.
That's what keeps you hooked, right? The constant uncertainty and the need to know what really happened.
Exactly. But the author doesn't stop there. She uses this brilliant analogy of a track and field baton pass to illustrate the relationship between the two sisters, Charlie and Samantha.
Oh, that's interesting. I wonder how that plays out.
It works on so many levels. On the surface, it reflects the literal events of the story, but it also speaks to these broader themes of teamwork, communication, and how those childhood experiences can have such a lasting impact.
It's like those seemingly insignificant moments from our past can foreshadow bigger issues that we might face later on.
Precisely. And then there's this high school yearbook. Such a mundane object, right?
Yeah.
But it becomes this key piece of evidence.
Wow. Makes you realize that even the most ordinary things can hold hidden clues.
Right. It's a reminder that investigators often have to piece together a story from these seemingly insignificant details.
Just like those forensic experts finding a tiny fiber or a stray hair at a crime scene, it's all about connecting the dots.
It makes you wonder how many hidden clues we miss in our own lives.
We're surrounded by so much information, but are we really paying attention to the stories behind it all?
Exactly. And speaking of stories, one of the big things The Good Daughter explores is the public's fascination with true crime. It even acknowledges it within the story. Why do you think we're so drawn to these dark, disturbing tales?
That's a question that's fascinated people for ages. There's this simultaneous horror and fascination we feel when we hear about violence and suffering.
It's like a morbid curiosity, but it also feels like we're searching for something deeper, like trying to understand why these things happen.
Maybe it's a way to confront our own vulnerabilities, to grapple with the complexities of good and evil.
It definitely makes you think about those big questions. The Good Daughter takes us down some dark paths for sure. So far, we've uncovered the science of likability, delved into the impact of trauma, and explored those legal ethics dilemmas. Where do we go from here?
Well, we've only scratched the surface. There's so much more to uncover as we continue our deep dive into The Good Daughter. We'll be exploring those secrets, those small-town dynamics, and all those twists and turns of the investigation as we try to piece together what really happened.
It's a wild ride, and I'm glad you're here to help navigate it.
Happy to be here.
Let's take a closer look at those characters, their relationships, and how the past continues to haunt them in part 2 of our deep dive.
Those characters are definitely what keeps you glued to the pages. It's not just about the mystery itself, but also about these individuals and how they're shaped by everything they've been through.
Right, and the book really doesn't hold back when it comes to showing how tough it can be to deal with trauma. One thing that stood out to me was how Samantha, who's still struggling with the aftermath of that childhood incident, she uses things like meditation and physical activity to cope with her anger and anxiety.
It's like she's trying to find those healthy outlets for those really intense emotions, and the novel portrays those coping mechanisms in a way that feels, both realistic and hopeful.
Definitely. It's not about erasing the trauma entirely, but about finding ways to manage those difficult emotions.
Exactly. It reminds us that healing isn't always a straight line. Sometimes you have to take detours, try different things, and find what works for you.
Absolutely. It makes you think about all those different tools and resources available for people dealing with similar experiences in real life.
There are so many approaches out there, and it's about finding what resonates with each individual. But shifting gears a bit, the novel also touches on how social perception can be influenced by things like clothing and appearance.
Oh, yeah. Remember how Sam, the lawyer from New York, kind of stands out in that small town? It's like her clothing almost becomes a symbol of her being an outsider.
She's described as wearing all black, but it's the wrong kind of black, if you will, the expensive, sophisticated kind that immediately sets her apart.
Makes you wonder how often we make those snap judgments about people based on how they look, even if we don't realize we're doing it.
It's a subtle but powerful way to show the cultural divide between Sam and that community.
It definitely makes you think about those times when you've felt like an outsider and whether your appearance played a role in how you were perceived. But it's not just Sam who faces judgment. Kelly, the young woman accused of the shooting, she's subject to so much scrutiny.
Especially in that small town setting, right? The novel does a great job of portraying how quickly individuals can be labeled and ostracized, even before all the facts are known.
It's like this instant rush to judgment, especially when it's a crime that involves violence. Everyone's looking for a reason, an explanation, to make sense of something that often doesn't make sense.
It speaks to our need to create narratives, to find a cause and effect, you know? Especially when faced with something as senseless as a school shooting.
We try to understand the incomprehensible, but as the investigation unfolds, we start to see that Kelly's story is so much more complicated than anyone initially realized. Just like with those hidden confessions, the truth isn't always black and white.
There are so many layers, and often those initial assumptions we make can be so far from the truth.
And just when you think you're starting to get a handle on the situation, the novel throws you another curveball. The murder weapon, the gun used in the shooting, disappears.
Oh, wow. Talk about raising the stakes. It's like the author saying, nope, you don't get to relax just yet.
Right. It makes you wonder about all those real-life cold cases where crucial evidence goes missing and the mystery remains unsolved. But it's not just the physical evidence that's unreliable. There's also this audio recording of Kelly's confession to the police, but the sound is all distorted.
Makes you wonder if there's been tampering or intentional manipulation. Can we always trust the information we're given, even from those seemingly authoritative sources?
It's like we, as readers, have to become detectives ourselves to look at everything with a critical eye. But then the novel does something I didn't see coming. It brings in this connection to weather science.
Wait, what? Weather science? That's an interesting twist.
It turns out that Gamma, the brilliant scientist, was really into weather patterns.
Like a hidden passion.
Yeah, and she even contributed to some early research in that field. There's this scene where Charlie finds a really old weather science book that belonged to Gamma.
So it suggests that she was ahead of her time.
Exactly. Years ahead in understanding the complexities of climate and forecasting. It made me think about all those hidden contributions women have made to science throughout history.
Absolutely. It's a great way to acknowledge those achievements that often get overlooked. But getting back to the main story, the novel also really portrays the emotional toll of taking care of a loved one who's been seriously injured.
Yeah, that's such a powerful part of the story. The way Charlie and Sam rally around their father, Rusty, after he's stabbed.
You can really feel the love and loyalty, but also that constant fear and worry. And then, just when you think things can't get any worse, Rusty dies.
It's like one blow after another. It's a reminder that even in the midst of trying to solve a crime, life keeps happening, and those everyday struggles and tragedies don't just go away. And as if dealing with their father's death wasn't enough, they discovered that he'd been getting letters from Zachariah Culpepper,
The man who terrorized them all those years ago and who killed their mother?
the one and only.
Mm.
It's like the past is reaching out from the shadows and refusing to let go. Those letters become this looming threat.
You know, it's a stark reminder that even when we try to move on, the past can still have a hold on us.
It can shape our present in ways we don't even realize. And as Charlie and Sam try to piece together what happened to their father, they uncover this hidden confession that changes everything we thought we knew about the shooting.
Another layer of the onion peeled back.
Right. It makes you question everything, not just about the shooting, but about our own memories and interpretations.
Mm.
Can we ever really be sure of what we think we know?
It's like that classic philosophical question, what is truth?
Exactly. And The Good Daughter really makes you think about that. But it doesn't stop there. It also reveals that Kelly, the young woman accused of the crime, might not have acted alone.
Hold on, so there might be more to the story than meets the eye.
Oh, there's definitely more. It introduces this whole idea of a conspiracy. Suddenly, everyone's a suspect.
It's like those true crime documentaries where a seemingly straightforward case suddenly explodes into this web of interconnected events.
And you're left wondering who's pulling the strings. But then, as we dig deeper, we find out that Mason Huckabee, the teacher who was initially hailed as a hero,
The one who supposedly disarmed Kelly.
yep, that's him. Well, it turns out he might not be as innocent as everyone thought. It's like that saying, never meet your heroes.
Sometimes the people we put on pedestals can have their own flaws and hidden agendas.
The novel really makes you question the idea of who we consider heroes and why. And as we learn more about Mason, we discover this huge secret. He was actually there when Charlie and Sam were attacked years ago.
The attack that resulted in their mother's death. So he witnessed the whole thing.
He was right there, which means he's connected to their past in a way that no one could have predicted.
That's insane. It adds a whole new layer of psychological intrigue to the story. It's like those events from their childhood are now directly impacting the present.
It's like everything comes full circle.
Yeah.
And then there's another bombshell. Mason was in love with their mother, Gamma.
Wow, that changes things. It makes you see his actions in a whole new light. Maybe his involvement in what's happening now is driven by those unresolved
Like a
feelings.
tragic love story woven into this whole thriller plot. And then, get this, Mason was actually going to take the blame for Gamma's murder.
Wait, seriously, why would he do that?
To protect the Culpepper brothers. To keep Charlie and Sam from being hurt even more.
That's both incredibly selfless and incredibly messed up at the same time.
Right. It makes you think about the true nature of heroism. Is it about those grand public displays, or is it about those quiet acts of courage that no one ever sees? But hold on, it gets even more complicated. Rusty, their father, knew about Mason's confession.
And he kept it a secret. Why would he do that?
To protect his daughters, of course. But it raises all these questions about the weight of secrets and whether shielding someone from the truth can sometimes do more harm than good.
It's a classic dilemma with no easy answers.
And as Charlie and Sam are trying to process all of this, they find themselves drawn back to the farmhouse where their mother was murdered.
Going back to the place where it all began, it's like they're trying to face their demons head on.
It's a powerful reminder
Yeah.
that the past is always with us, even when we try to run from it. And while they're at the farmhouse, they discover something else, a series of canceled checks.
Canceled checks. What's the significance of that?
They were sent by Rusty to Judith Pinkman.
Hold on, the wife of the teacher who was killed in the shooting. Why would Rusty be sending her money?
That's the million-dollar question. It opens up a whole new can of worms. Was it blackmail, charity, or something even more sinister?
The plot thickens, and it just keeps getting crazier. As they investigate those checks, they uncover another bombshell. Judith Pinkman might have been pregnant at the time of the shooting.
Talk about a game changer.
It makes you wonder if Kelly's actions, as horrific as they were, might have been influenced by the thought of protecting an unborn child.
It raises this huge moral question. Can any act, no matter how terrible, ever be justified?
That's a tough one. And the novel doesn't give you any easy answers, it just makes you think, but it doesn't stop there. As we go deeper into Judith's story, we find out that she might not have been a victim at all. She might have actually been an accomplice.
Whoa, so she was in on it from the beginning.
It seems that way. And the more we learn about her role, the more shocking it gets. She might have been the one who actually fired the gun, not Kelly.
Mind blown.
Well,
This changes everything. It makes you realize how easily we can be manipulated, how we can be led to believe a certain narrative that might not be true at all.
it's all about the power of perception. What we see, what we believe, isn't always the reality. And in this case, the reality is much darker and more twisted than anyone could have imagined. But as we delve into Judith's motivations, it seems that her actions might have been driven by this intense desire to protect her marriage and her future with Doug, the teacher who was killed.
So it's a story of love and loss, but also of desperation and making choices with terrible consequences.
Exactly. It shows how grief and fear can drive people to do things they never thought they were capable of. And in a truly heart-wrenching turn of events, Judith confesses. She tells everything about her role in the shooting, and you can feel the weight of her guilt and remorse.
It's a reminder that our actions have consequences, and sometimes those consequences can be devastating.
Absolutely. And as Judith's story unfolds, we learn that her decision to participate in the shooting might have stemmed from this deep resentment towards Kelly.
Interesting. So there's a whole other layer of interpersonal conflict at play here.
Yeah, it's like she saw Kelly as the symbol of everything she felt she was lacking. Youth, opportunity, the chance to have a family.
It's a reminder that comparison can be so toxic. It can lead us down such dark paths. And the novel really drives that point home when Judith tries to take her own life.
It's such a tragic act of desperation. She just can't live with the guilt. But as Judith's story comes to an end, Charlie and Sam are left to pick up the pieces. They've lost their father, they've uncovered all these secrets, and they're still trying to come to terms with the shooting.
They've been through so much. It's a testament to their strength that they're even able to function at this point.
It's a story about resilience, for sure, about the power of family and the importance of forgiveness, even when it's incredibly difficult.
And even though the novel takes us to some really dark places, it ultimately ends on this note of cautious optimism.
It suggests that even when it feels like everything is falling apart, there's still hope for healing and finding a way to move forward.
And there's this one final scene that really stuck with me. Samantha gets an email with a photograph of her mother, Gamma.
Oh, wow. I bet that was incredibly emotional.
It was. The picture captured her youthful spirit, her joy for life. It's like a reminder that even in the midst of tragedy, there's still beauty to be found.
And that our memories can be a source of comfort and strength.
It really makes you think about how we hold on to those we've lost. Even after they're gone, their presence can still be felt in those little details, those memories we cherish. But for me, one of the things that really stuck with me was how the novel explores this whole idea of truth and perception. It's like it's constantly challenging us to question what we think we know.
Oh, absolutely. The characters are constantly grappling with those unreliable memories, the limitations of evidence, their own biases. It makes you realize that the truth can be so elusive, especially when it comes to something as complex as a crime and all the emotions tied up in it.
It's almost like the novel saying, hey, don't take anything at face value. Look deeper. Question your assumptions.
Right, because those initial perceptions we have, they can be so misleading. And the novel really drives that point home by not shying away from the darker side of things, you know? It explores those motivations behind violence and betrayal and deception, and those aren't always easy things to confront.
Definitely not a light read, that's for sure.
Yeah.
But it makes you think, makes you question things about human nature, about how we understand the world around us. And even with all that darkness, there are these moments of hope. The novel shows the power of forgiveness, the bonds of family, that resilience that people can find even in the face of terrible things.
Exactly. There's this underlying message about the possibility of healing, of finding a way to move forward, even when it seems impossible. And I think that's what makes it such a powerful story. It doesn't sugarcoat things, but it also doesn't leave you completely despairing.
It acknowledges those complexities of human nature, the good, the bad, everything in between. It's like life, I guess, full of messiness and contradictions.
Well said. It's a testament to the author's skill that she can weave all of those different elements together into a story that's so captivating and thought-provoking.
And I think that's what makes it a book you can read multiple times and still discover something new. Each time you come back to it, you might notice a different detail, a different layer of meaning.
Absolutely. There's always more to uncover, which is why I think it's time to wrap up this deep dive.
Yeah, I think we've covered a lot of ground here.
We've explored the science, the psychology, the legal and ethical dilemmas,
And we've delved into those complex characters and their relationships.
all against the backdrop of this small town with its own secrets and dynamics.
So, to everyone listening, thank you for joining us on this deep dive into The Good Daughter.
Eh?
We hope you've enjoyed exploring this thriller with us. And hey, if you haven't read the book yet, we highly recommend it.
It's definitely one that will stay with you.
Until next time, happy reading, everyone.